Welcome to Critical Culture. Today I'm here with advice from the last decade of my employment. Job security is a myth. For most, it's a concept that's been fading for decades. Truth be told, if it did exist, it may look like the same job for the rest of your working life. And you may not like that either. Little background, my dad worked for the same company from when he left the Navy until he retired. Now, it was bought and sold a few times, but he always moved with the equipment and basically stayed with the same company. So in the year 2000, I was working my first IT job, and I recall telling a coworker that I wanted to work that job for my entire career. I'd seen how that had benefited my father, and I wanted the same thing, and I valued loyalty to me, and I thought therefore it was also good for me to be loyal to my company. My coworker heard this and promptly laughed at me and set me straight. He explained how I would never earn what I could or become who I could become by working at the same company my entire career. So today we're going to go over some of my job history and find some lessons I think may help you navigate your career in this type of environment. Again, the beginnings of my IT career, I was actually working at Wapaka Foundry. I was working out on the shop floor with molten iron. I knew I had some skill in IT. I had been familiar with the concept since I was 5 years old, when my father originally told me that, hey, computers were going to be everywhere by the time I was working, so get used to them. So I just kind of clung to that. And when I had gotten hired at Wapaka Foundry to work out on the floor, I told them that I was good with computers. Even though I didn't have any experience outside of what I did in high school, I didn't have any degree post-high school, but I told them, and after a few years, an opening came up in the office, in the IT department, and it wasn't anything glorious or glamorous, but it was experience. So I took a 25% pay cut to go from second shift to third shift, and I was a glorified office assistant. I babysat an I-Series. It's like a mini mainframe in the middle of the night. I printed out reports. I ran certain jobs. I changed backup tapes. I sat there a lot waiting for things to do. I begged people in the PC department and other application areas to give me work to do. So I ended up doing all sorts of weird stuff, converting PCs from Ethernet or from token ring to Ethernet. I cleaned and repaired printers. I mean, stuff you just do not really want to do. But I knew experience was king, and I wanted to increase what I knew. I wanted to make the most of it. In my free time, didn't have the internet in the office back then. That was only for special employees. So when I got bored, I would look around for help files on the Windows operating system and figure out, oh, what's traceroute? What does that do? What's ping? What does that do? And I just read everything I could and did everything I could do. And I worked that for 4 years. It was a great platform to start to get experience and have some job background. Now, during that time, I was also going to school. I wanted to be a Java programmer back then. They didn't use Java. So it's like, well, what do they use here? I didn't want to be an RPG programmer on their I-Series, but they did have something called Lotus Notes and Domino that they had developers and administrators for. So number one, first tip, I guess, before we get too far, get experience. Any experience you can get, volunteering, taking a pay cut, doing odd jobs, as long as it's IT related, experience is king. Start to get experience. Job tip number 2 that we're getting into here, certifications can be very helpful. So Lotus Notes Domino wasn't something that they would teach in tech school, but it was a skill I knew they needed. So I talked to the people that did it, and I realized that there were certifications that you could get from IBM that proved you knew how to either administer or develop systems like that. So I went out wanting to be a developer, and I got an advanced level certification in Lotus Notes Domino development. I took 3 tests, ended up studying and reading a bunch of stuff and playing around in my free time to learn this. I got this advanced level certification over the course of 9 months, promptly went to the IT director and said, look what I got. I want to do some programming. And she looked at me and said, well, we don't need programmers. We need administrators. I'm like, what does an administrator do? And promptly turned around and learned how to do that. So administrators, like, they take care of a system, right? So when we think about Lotus Notes Domino, it was a server that, you know, it had to be configured. People had to look at the logs. People had to troubleshoot problems. There was a lot of unglamorous stuff called administration that needed to be done. So I promptly learned how to do that. And that led to the next step of my career. True to my coworkers' point, I got the impression after 4 years that I really wasn't going anywhere there, especially going anywhere fast, because I didn't have experience. They didn't see me as someone that had some mysterious outside knowledge. I was this guy that they got off the factory floor that's been printing off reports and changing backup tapes for 4 years. So I went out armed with my knowledge, and I found in the job market, lo and behold, that these Lotus Notes and Domino administrator skills were actually perhaps more valuable than development skills, because there was a lot of companies that used it and not all of them used it for applications. So I was thankful that I went with the flow and I learned how to do administration, and I got my second job in IT. That one was very short-lived, not a lot of lessons there. I think in the end it wasn't a great fit. I was potentially going to be moving to do the job. I didn't like some of the culture there. But it was good to go out and get another job making significantly more money and have a second job on my resume. So now, having seen 2 different types of jobs and I was starting to get even more specialized skills, I took my certifications and still lack of degree and was able to parlay that into my third job. And my third job was with a consulting company. My role there was in part to use the skills I learned, but in part it was also to learn a bunch of other stuff. They had this service they called Support Services on Demand, where they would basically help troubleshoot any problem with any IBM software for their customers, and I was the guy that had to do it. So another learning here, you're going to need to take on things that you don't already know. It's not always about specialized knowledge in specific things. A lot of it has to do with concepts like, how do you document a problem? How do you find resources related to the problem? How do you work technical support channels like IBM through problem resolution? So I did this for a few years. It was beneficial. Again, I'd gotten another pay raise. It was a decent job. Again, though, I felt like I was kind of going nowhere fast. After 2 years, I felt like I was always going to be in that kind of support role and not doing the direct consulting with customers like I wanted to do, where I felt like I would be leading projects and learning and executing at a different level. So I packed up my bags and I went to a fourth job. The next year goes kind of quickly. I know, good, bad, or indifferent, you don't want to hop around too much. You do need a few jobs. That year, I guess the big learning from that year it was 2007. And I started off at Logicalis. I went to CDW Burby. And then I went back to Wapaka Foundry again, and then I went back to Logicalis. So there was 2 jobs I had in that year, which it was the second time I had worked for a company. So especially in IT, you never want to burn bridges. I guess in any job, really, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to give notice. You want to do a good job. You want to be respectful when you're leaving of the people that remain behind. Even if you don't go back to that company, your reputation will follow you in the age of social networking. We'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn later. Like, your past experiences can always come up in the future and could get you a bad reputation. Other people move to different companies and may have some negative feedback if you did a poor job on something. So by the end of 2007, I was working again for the company that I had left, but now I was a consultant. I wasn't working the Support Services on Demand. I had branched out into a different kind of specialized area where it's WebSphere, something they don't really teach in school, still a somewhat valuable skill to the right customers. And I ended up getting quite a pay increase throughout the year, switching jobs a few times. But I think the big takeaway was do not burn your bridges. So that was in 2007. That time that I went back to Logicalis, and this entire time in my career, I was pretty much employed straight through. There was a 3-month gap there. We won't really get into. There wasn't a lot of lessons to be learned from that. Things turned out okay for me. But now I stayed at Logicalis for roughly 9 years. And again, if you look at the summary of my career to this point, it was get experience, keep adding experience, teach yourself very specialized things. And I got into a very high-paying job, but I was also into a very small niche where even within my company, a consulting company, I was the only person that did what I did. And there were customers they had for it, but it was getting to be somewhat few and far between. So after 9 years, by this point, I had spent most of my career more on what you'd call like the administrative side of things, even though I wanted to be development. After 9 years, I was let go from Logicalis, primarily because it was kind of a niche market, and they didn't want to do a bunch of niche things. They wanted to only do what they specialized in and had a number of staff doing. So at this point in my career, I was kind of flat-footed, and I think I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't like broadening my experience or deepening it in diverse areas. I was just getting into even more specialized things, and I was learning valuable terminology. I was getting valuable experience, but I left Logicalis. I had been let go. And the skill set that I had been leaning on for 9 years in terms of technical like platforms I worked with really wasn't that popular in the area that I lived, and remote work wasn't as popular either. So I was kind of adrift at this point. And I think learning here is make sure that you don't get too narrowed down into a specific niche that you would have a hard time finding another job. It's good to have some diversity and to know, if not, where else you could apply your trade if things did fell through. Because back to the original point, job security these days is largely a myth. That's not just in IT, but it is definitely also within IT. So diversify your experience, always be learning new things. So this led to a rough patch in my career. I spent 6 months at a retailer helping them upgrade point-of-sale applications. Wasn't, again, a great fit. I wasn't in good shape mentally when I went to that job. So that fell apart, and I had to dig even lower. That was to take a huge pay cut to do that. And then after that fell apart, and I was having a hard time finding a job with my existing skill set that had previously been quite lucrative, I ended up going all the way back down to working cable TV support at Spectrum for less than a third of what I was making. And it was an eye-opener for me, and it really forced me to reevaluate where I was at with my career. And as much as I knew I had a lot of valuable experience, I needed a new vehicle for that experience. So even after 15 years in the IT market without a degree, having very lucrative jobs, I went back to tech school to actually finish an associate's degree. So I started that while I was at Spectrum, and I started learning a whole new tech stack, right? Like I was always a Java guy when it came to development or tools and platforms. The local tech school said, yeah, you got to take programming classes, and guess what? We teach C#. So I went out and I learned C# at tech school, found out I actually liked it. It was nice to have a complete platform that was well integrated from the IDE to the language to the cloud platform and everything in between from one vendor. It was kind of nice. Partway through schooling, I think having gone back to schooling and redirected my career path more on the development side, it was easier for me to get a job. I ended up working at a company helping manage web content management system and open source Java portal that delivered school curriculum to students. School Specialty was the name of the company. And I worked there through the rest of my degree. And I got 3 years of really solid experience doing actual development, which was kind of back to the basics. So sometimes you can teach yourself when it comes to specialized things and certifications and other things, but it's also really beneficial to go back to school and to have that paper and to have someone help feed you the right progression of skills and tie it all together so that it looks good to employers. So now I had kind of rehabilitated my career, this time as a developer. I went on and worked for another company, Virgin Pulse, for 4 or 5 years. It was I think, now it's like Simplify Wellness or Simplify Health, I forget. Long story short, it was a much more formal development environment, hundreds of engineers, lots of code reviews, lots of automated DevOps, a lot of really fancy technology. It was really eye-opening. I found that I just did need kind of that jump start in terms of going to school and getting that job at School Specialty to again, I've gone to school. Now I've also got a couple of years experience doing development. It wasn't very long then that at Virgin Pulse, I was able to move all the way up to a senior software engineer and a senior software engineer and tech lead. So it did take, 4 years to surpass what I had earned originally as a consultant. It was a great job, really solid experience. I think in the end at Virgin Pulse, when I became a tech lead, I had a hard time separating myself from the developer aspect of my job. I still saw myself as an individual contributor and spent too much time as an individual contributor and didn't focus enough on the tech lead aspects of my job. So lesson here, when you do get a promotion into a leadership type thing, be ready to pull back on your role as an individual contributor. I was unable to do that despite having talked about that with my manager multiple times throughout performance reviews. It just wasn't going well. I had a hard time doing that. I did like the technical lead stuff, but I wasn't mentally prepared to let go of the individual contribution role. So I ended up taking demotion from tech lead back to senior software engineer, which led to some kind of dissatisfaction, right? It's like I had reached a level where I was doing a lot of planning and designing and stuff like that I was very good at, I enjoyed very much. But then when that was let go, I felt kind of cut out from being as involved as I was, and it was hard for me to handle. There was talk about an individual performance improvement plan, and usually when you get those, they're not great. That's not a great sign, and I opted to take the demotion instead and wound up going out to find another job once I started to become disillusioned with my job. So on to leaving Virgin Pulse, I did get a job and I put in my notice, and then lo and behold, at the last moment, the other job that I thought I had fell through and I found myself unemployed. So I guess that's something to be aware of too. It's nice that you can go out and get a job anywhere and remote and have little contact with people, but if you're going to go ahead and trust them with your future, you got to make sure you're really, really on the same page with everything, and that you're dealing with a situation that isn't going to fall through because of venture capital or funding or whatever reason. So, I mean, no fear. I've been here before. I've retooled my career. I've got a lot more experience now. I've got more relevant skills. I went back to an earlier tactic in my career where it was like, okay, let's get some certifications while I'm looking for a new job. Maybe we should branch out into another high-paying skill. And I did some research in the market and landed on Salesforce certification because it seemed to be a very high-paying career with Salesforce. I was also interested in AWS because I know AWS professionals are in high demand, although they don't pay as well as Salesforce people. I think that's one thing, like going back, if I were to reconsider it, if I had gotten AWS certifications, it would probably maybe wouldn't have been making as much money as a Salesforce job, but I would have been much more likely to be able to use those skills. And I think the other contrast with Salesforce versus when I first got involved with Lotus Notes and Domino, I was getting experience with a company working with that software as I was learning the certification. And the combination of, yes, I can put this legitimately on my resume as something I used, along with the certification is beneficial. Just having the certification makes you what they call a paper tiger, and that doesn't really have a lot of value. You could maybe get in as a very junior level person with those skills to try and get some of that experience, and it's a little bit longer of a climb to go back up that ladder. Depending on where you're at with your career, that may be what you need to do. In my case, I wasn't willing to go back down to scratch again, having just worked at Spectrum as a cable video support person for almost a year. I was a little bit more interested in something that could pay all my bills. So my next job was at a company called Warehouse Specialists. Great company, third-party logistics provider. I was hired as an enterprise architect, and titles can be fun. And they can help you in your career, and I did learn a lot of new things. Had a great experience working with them, really solid people. Unfortunately, what happened is they do a lot of work with like direct-to-consumer brands that were coming to them concerned about the tariffs here in 2025 and wanting to tighten belts. So WSI wanted to tighten belts, and I was a fairly high paid and had a fancy title and was maybe somewhat underutilized for what I was getting paid. So I was one of the people let go. No harm, no foul. I wasn't surprised. I would have done the same thing. It's good, beyond just more technical time, hands-on with C#, which comes in handy with the next job we'll get to. It was good to get a little bit broader industry experience. There can be value to saying, hey, I've always worked for healthcare. I know Epic Systems. I'm going to have a career in this forever. There's also value in saying, hey, I've worked as a consultant. I've worked with governments. I've worked with manufacturers. I've worked with insurance agents. I've worked with third-party logistics providers. I've seen technology in a lot of different places, and it can give you a unique perspective on it that can help you pick up new environments quicker, or unique ways to apply technology that maybe someone that's always been in medical or always been in insurance may not have. So those are some of the good things. What I did learn, again, that was kind of a reminder about job security. Again, that was the third time during this whole period where I had been fired through no fault of my own. Like the companies, in one case, it really wasn't a great fit, so it was actually a great thing. And in the end, you make even getting fired a good thing by keeping your head up and moving forward, getting your next job and making a better life for yourself. But job security being a myth, when I got let go from WSI, I wanted to go out as an independent consultant. I had 25 years plus of experience. I knew quite a few people throughout the Midwest. I had a lot of different skills that I could apply. Looking at trying to make money, I said I could be a consultant. Trying to monetize my YouTube channel for reasons I'm not going to get into here, but just diversity of income, saving retirement, and other things that have special finance-related concerns. So I wanted to do independent consulting, maybe supplement that with some monetization of my YouTube channel and my podcast. But what I learned is you can't do that when you just get unemployed. If that's going to be a part of your plan for the future, if that's something you want to do to set yourself up for a flexible future with multiple income streams, you definitely need to be working on that consistently while you're employed. Because when you're unemployed, you're going to be even more unsure. You're going to be trying to do the monetization while you're trying to start up a business, and you're going to be looking for new jobs because you don't know when any of this is going to come through. And you're not going to be quite as steady as you may normally be because you are now unemployed, and depending on your savings, the clock is ticking. So one thing I learned there, again, after getting let go from WSI, is if you want to be independent or to have multiple income streams, you really should be working on that before you even get fired, because job security is a myth. Beyond that, the job market was a little bit different for me this time. I look at all the jobs I've had over the last 10 years. I've applied for them either through LinkedIn or Indeed. That is where I've found a majority of my jobs, no longer just going directly to company sites. Although there were times I did go directly to the major employers in my area, directly to their website and searching for jobs and applying. The ones I actually got were through LinkedIn or Indeed. This time around, it was different. I ran into what I'd call AI slop along the way. There's a fair number of jobs where you're not actually applying to the employer. You're applying to somebody who's got some AI job service that's going to go spray your application everywhere it thinks it's appropriate. And it's kind of messy, and you're going to get a deluge of email and text and other stuff, but probably not a lot of actual good job leads. And I think on the hiring side, there's probably also AI that's helping them filter this new influx of candidates. Good, bad, or indifferent. You could say that it's going to filter out good applications. That's already been going on since the dawn of time. That's where they've got requirements like you must have a bachelor's degree or whatnot. But it's definitely another area in life where AI is being used on both sides of the equation, and it just gets more disconnected. I thought I had conceptually this idea that as an IT professional who's worked primarily remote for a long time, hey, I can apply for a job anywhere in the United States, really anywhere in the country. This is great. What I thought about less and realized more as time went on is that means everybody all over the world can apply for jobs all over the world. So it doesn't really, there's some advantage there if you've got specific skill sets and the job is really right for you, but it's not as great of an advantage as it seems because it is something everybody has. So it's no longer an advantage, that is just the playing field. So what did work and what worked for a few of these cases before, like both times that I returned to a job at Wapaka Foundry and at Logicalis, both of those times when I returned, I heard about that job through a friend that was still working there. So again, don't burn your bridges. You'll find you may want to retravel some of those, even if you don't use them for a reference. In this case, with my current job, I just started yesterday at Jewelers Mutual. I did not even apply for that one before they contacted me. I had been established on LinkedIn for a long time, since, let's just say a really long time I've been on LinkedIn. I'm not a power user per se, I don't post a lot, but I've posted and connected enough. And when I was let go, I did one of those open to work kind of announcements. And through a second or third level connection, that got in front of an HR person at Jewelers Mutual, and they reached out to me. And they asked if I thought I was appropriate for any of those jobs. And lo and behold, that's where I ended up getting hired. So I think, and this is even old advice, networking is key in the career, whatever your career choice is, networking is very important. Don't be sleeping on LinkedIn. It's not just going to trade shows or going to user groups. Those are important to meet new people and get acquaintances. But even if you meet those kind of people, they may not think of you 2 years later to give you that job. But if you're connected on LinkedIn, they may see your post about it and they may remember it. Or somebody that works in HR at their company may see it and may remember it. So don't be sleeping on LinkedIn, not just applying for jobs through there, but also through social networking, because that's exactly what landed me my job. So that is what I have to share with you today. I guess to wrap up, job security is a myth. Don't count on it. Do your best. If your job is good, continue to try and grow. Assume you're going to have to get different jobs in your career, and make sure you're keeping your skill set marketable. Certifications can certainly help. They are a lot less value without experience. Although without experience, they can still get you in at the ground level if you need to start or you need to retool your career. Proactively manage your skill development. And one of the best ways I do this is every year it's always, what are the hot skills this year in tech? What are the hot skills for the next 5 years in tech? Search for those articles once in a while. Read them whenever you see them. Look at things. Understand what's hot and adjacent to skills you already have or things you're interested in, and spend some time learning about those, even if you don't go to formal schooling. That is a good compass for what kind of skills you want to develop. If you're going to rely on side hustles like monetization or a podcast or being an influencer or getting sponsored or being an independent consultant or starting your own business, these are things you have to establish while you're still working because they take time and you're not going to have the time to follow through with that while you are looking for jobs, and you're not going to have time for them to pay off while you're still looking at jobs. Networking is king, so never burn your bridges. Always make as many connections as you can at your current job, at trade shows, anywhere you're talking to people with similar skills. Connect on LinkedIn. You may be able to help them. They may be able to help you. To a lesser extent, possibly on Facebook or Instagram or Threads or wherever else, depending on what you are trying to do as a specialization or a side hustle. But networking, especially social networking, so you can leverage those people, is very important. I look back at my career and I see specialization, like with some of the IBM software, was definitely beneficial, very beneficial, but more in the shorter term. Sometimes that specialization can be harder to leverage in the longer term as technology overturns. And diversity is the longer term game. So I look at my career and being an admin for half my career and a developer for half, that makes me very skilled. I've been a lead, I've been an enterprise architect, I've been a consultant, so I can go into a company and I can digest what's going on from multiple levels at the same time and get up to speed really quickly and prove a lot of value very quickly while I'm still new and still cementing my reputation with people that are meeting me for the first time. If you're newer in your career or you are looking to retool, what I've seen recently, two of the hot recommendations for this moment would be Python and AWS. High demand skills. I'm not going to get into why, but both of them are very high demand. And I am starting to plan a YouTube series designed to help people get skilled up on these topics, as well as some popular artificial intelligence APIs. That's all today. Thanks for your time. See you again soon.